So now moving on to the next point, this basically relates to when do you file your return of income. So what the law provides is return shall be filed on or before the due date. So what happens? Every person has to file his return of income on or before the due date. Now what do you mean by due date? Now due date is basically different in case of different categories of assessee. And I'll just explain it to you as to what do you mean by the due date. What are the due dates in respect of various categories of assessee. But what is mandatory under the law is that the return has to be filed on or before the due date in the prescribed form. So there are different categories of form which are available for different categories of assessee and verified in the prescribed manner. I'm not sure how many of you would have seen the income tax forms, but at the end of the form there is a verification done by the person who's signing the return in case of a physical return or otherwise, which says that I, ABC, son of XYZ, have seen the return and I hereby acknowledge that this is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and information. So the return has to be filed before the due date. Now what is the due date? That's a matter of fact which depends on what category of assessee you falls in. I will just explain this to you. The return has to be filed in the prescribed form. So there are prescribed forms. One person who has certain set of income may have a different form. Other person who has different category of income may have a different form. So it's not that everyone has a common form in which they have to file their return of income. Every person has a different form in which he has to file his return of income and verified in the prescribed manner. So what you have to do is you have to verify your return in the prescribed manner. So now let us move and let us see what do you mean by due date. Now due date for the purpose of filing return of income for various categories of assessee is as under. Now for a company or for a person other than a company whose accounts are required to be audited under the Income Tax Act or any other law, or a working partner in a firm whose accounts are required to be audited under the Income Tax Act or any other law, the date is 30th September of the assessment year. Now basically, let me take you through one by one. Company, we all know, we've discussed what all kind of companies are covered here. Let us see what is the other two categories that we are discussing. For a person other than a company whose accounts are required to be audited under the Income Tax Act or any other law. So any person other than a company, we know what is the definition of person under the Income Tax Act. So we see all those persons and we identify who all are required to get their accounts audited under the Income Tax Act. The Income Tax Act would mean basically tax audit or any other law. So suppose you are an insurance company and under the IRDA law, Insurance Regulatory Authority law, you have to get your accounts audited. Then the due date for you for filing the return of income is 30th September. The third category is working partner in a firm whose accounts are required to be audited under the Income Tax Act or any other law. Now what happens here is, and the reason for putting this specific clause is that, if suppose the accounts of a firm are required to be audited, the firm has the time up to 30th September. Now till the time the accounts of the firm are finalized, working partner can't file his return of income because he has to get the interest, salary, profit and everything out of there. So therefore, the working partner of a firm, please note it's working partner, it's not the dormant partner, because the dormant partner is falling on the fourth category which we discussed below. So only working partner has an obligation or rather has a relaxation to file his return of income by 30th September. For any other assessee, the due date is 31st of July.